Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the annual Northeast Economic Forum. It's great to have you with you for this panel, Build Back Better, SME Empowerment and Sustainable Recovery in the Northeast. My name is Peter Cardwell. I'm a political commentator and I'm a former special advisor to 4 cabinet ministers. And we'll be joined by a cabinet minister in just a moment. That's Kwasi Kwarteng, the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and it's a real pleasure to have him. Looking at the guest list for this event, it is a veritable who's who of the Northeast in terms of politics, in terms of economics, in terms of business. There are so many great people on today, and we really want to hear your questions throughout this event. There's a Q&A box. You can ask any question at any time. Just type it in there in the Q&A box, and my colleagues will have a look through those and send me those questions. So before we just get started with the speeches, we're going to look at a very short video, just a 2-minute video from Intuit. And you'll probably be aware that Intuit, which of course is behind QuickBooks, and I've used QuickBooks myself in my own small business, they have been the absolute driving force behind the Prosperity Hub. And my colleague is now going to play a short video of 2 minutes to have a look at the work this Prosperity Hub is doing, and then we'll hear a little bit more about that.
Intuit QuickBooks has launched its first Prosperity Hub in the UK that will support job opportunities and growth by equipping entrepreneurs with the skills that they'll need to build successful small businesses. The Northeast was selected because it has the highest unemployment rate in the UK. It's been one of the hardest hit regions for job losses due to COVID-19, and it has the lowest number of small and medium businesses in the country. We've started our mission with a Prosperity Hub school district programme at Excelsior Academy. This programme focuses on addressing inequality in education for underserved students. We believe addressing inequality in the classroom today helps expand possibilities for job and financial opportunities in the future. This programme provides support and training to students, teachers and administrators. We sent our team out to Excelsior Academy to see how the Prosperity Hub is making a difference.
Excelsior Academy is a large all-through academy for young people from the ages of 3 through to 19. The biggest challenges for young people in the Northeast and in the region are around that uncertainty of future, and we want to future-proof the young people, and lots of educators and principals and heads like myself want to make sure that the young people are prepared for a job that we don't know necessarily exists at the moment. We need to make sure that we're maximising the opportunities given to us by the increased usage of digital devices in school. They're no longer an accessory, they are actually a fully functioning learning tool. Intuit's Prosperity Hub trained us through a number of sessions. The first sessions were around the Design for Delight framework and conceptually helping us to problem solve. We're also moving into thinking about developing entrepreneurship in our young people. The impact of the support from Intuit's Prosperity Hub has been significant for us. I want the young people here to lead happy, prosperous lives into the future. I want them to be kind, ambitious, hardworking, global citizens, but I also want them to be digital savvy.
Well, plenty of food for thought there from the Prosperity Hub and the excellent work it's doing at Excelsior Academy and indeed elsewhere. If you've just joined us in the last few minutes while the video was on, this is the annual Northeast Economic Forum. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Peter Cardwell, chairing today's event. I'm a political commentator and former special advisor to 4 cabinet ministers. We're going to hear very, very briefly now, we hear from the Secretary of State, we're going to hear from Alan Donnelly, who is the Executive Chair of Sovereign Strategy. Alan.
Well, Peter, thanks very much for chairing today's session. And I'm delighted that the Secretary of State can join us today. I know that we've got Sharon Hodgson, who's a member of Parliament in the North East. We've got Jamie Driscoll, the Mayor of North of the Tyne, North Tyneside, Northumberland. Jamie, welcome to this. And there will be people joining us from the Local Enterprise Partnership and also from businesses in the region. I think, as the Intuit video pointed out, and I want to congratulate them on creating the Prosperity Hub, is that the North East has historically had very high unemployment. But the thing is that our region has always had a fantastic ambition to build new businesses. But the one area where we've had real problems is the creation of small businesses. We create them, but we don't always sustain them. And so I think one of the things we would like support from the political parties in Britain is to find a way of making sure that we can encourage particularly young entrepreneurs to set up businesses and then for us to sustain them. And this Northeast Economic Forum, which was set up about 15 years ago, is an apolitical platform. People don't pay to join the discussion. It's an open platform. And we really want to try and promote a dialogue in our region about how we can build back better. And so we're grateful for the Secretary of State to join us today. The Nissan announcement, which he was associated with last week, was fantastic. But we do need to look at much better initiatives to help to build the small business community and then sustain it and make sure we can get many more entrepreneurs creating jobs in our region. So, Peter, thanks for chairing this and welcome to everyone to the event today.
Thank you very much indeed, Alan Donnelly there from Sovereign Strategy. Well, I'm delighted that our keynote speaker is here. It's always a relief when you see the keynote speaker has logged in. So thank you very much indeed for doing so. The Right Honourable Kwasi Kwarteng MP has been the Secretary of State for Business now for about 7 months. He's already made a huge impression in the Cabinet. And Alan mentioned the Nissan deal there, one of many deals that he has been part of and instrumental in. And we're really interested to hear what he has to say. And then we'll get an opportunity to put some questions to him. He can't join us sadly for the whole session, but I know that he's joining us for as long as he can. So Secretary of State, over to you for your remarks.
Thank you so much. And I'm delighted to be addressing you at the Northeast Economic Forum. And one or two of you I've met in my previous guise as Energy Minister. And I'm delighted also to point out that from my point of view, I think what we're looking at, as far as the Northeast is concerned, as far as net zero is concerned, is really a secular transformation. And by that, I mean, this is the kind of investment, the kind of potential transformation that you don't see every 10 years. I mean, it's a generational thing. And briefly, my thesis is that the Northeast, I think, has the potential and is already at the center of the green industrial revolution in this country. And I'll just sort of fill out my argument, if I may, very quickly. When I came into Bays 2 years ago, we talked about CCUS, but it seemed like a pipe dream. We'd marched up that hill and marched down again. But CCUS, I think, is something that's very real. There's the prospect of hydrogen production as well in the Northeast, particularly in the cluster around Teesside. And of course, as Peter and I think Alan were kind enough to observe, we've had a large measure of investment only in the last 6 weeks, or really 3 months, let's say. We've had GE, which has committed £142 million to build wind turbine manufacture wind turbines for the offshore wind industry, and that was in April, I think. We've had Nissan itself, £1 billion committed to the Sunderland plant, and also it wasn't just Nissan, it was Nissan and Envision, who are battery manufacturers, and the two of them together will create something like 1,600 new jobs for the region, so that we can actually land EV production for many years to come. On top of that, only last week, Smulders, which is again a manufacturing group, announced £70 million, which will sustain something like 325 jobs in Wallsend in the Newcastle area, servicing the offshore wind industry. So we look at the 10-point plan, we look at an offshore wind industry that will go, we expect, from 10 gigawatts today of capacity to 40 gigawatts by 2030, only in 9 years. And before you get too worried about that target, we've already got 9 gigawatts in production. So we're talking about a doubling, really, by 2030. All of this represents a huge economic opportunity for the Northeast, because all of these areas touch upon Teesside, touch upon the Tyne, touch upon what was traditionally a historic industrial powerhouse of the UK. And I think that the green industrial revolution that we're witnessing really could sustain jobs in the area in the Northeast for decades to come. And that was very much, finally, the message I got when I was in Sunderland. The Prime Minister was there as well. That was how seriously we took the Nissan announcement. And just speaking to apprentices, speaking to people who'd worked, and in some cases their fathers and mothers had worked on the plant, I was very struck by the fact that people in the Nissan plant were very, very conscious that this is a really, really big vote of confidence in the Northeast. I think Alan is right. I think we could do more to boost small and medium-sized businesses. But that's why the Smulders deal was significant, because we've got a commitment in the offshore wind sector deal to have up to 60%, well, to hit 60% of UK content in the offshore wind supply chain. So there are opportunities there that we want to see the Northeast really, really build on. And I think it's a really exciting prospect. I'm not guaranteeing prosperity. I mean, there are lots of ways in which, dare I say, policies can be frustrated. But I think there's a real opportunity here, and I hope we can do our best as a government, and with the cooperation of people around this virtual table, I hope we can do our best to realise some of those, to realise some of that promise.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed for your opening remarks. There really quite a lot to chew on there, and if you want to respond to anything the Secretary of State has said, or anything else you hear during the course of this event, please put your questions in the Q&A box just down at the bottom of the screen, and my colleagues will have a look at those and feed them through to me. Let's hear, I'm conscious of the Secretary of State's time. I know he's only got about another 10 minutes or so. I want to hear from Ami Verma, who's the Head of Customer Success at Intuit. Ami, over to you.
Great, thank you, Peter. Yes, Peter said, my name's Ami Verma. I lead the UK Customer Success team for Intuit QuickBooks. We truly are passionate about the North East and Newcastle. We're currently employing around 140 employees via our now Prosperity Hub contact centre. Intuit was founded 38 years ago with a mission to simplify running your business. We're best known in the UK for small business platform QuickBooks. Our global mission, which our CEO, employees and shareholders are behind, is to power prosperity globally. In the UK, we'll do this by improving the success rate of small businesses. Pre-COVID, 58% of small businesses will fail in the UK in their first 5 years. Our goal is to improve this by 10 percentage points. It's been a really challenging time for small businesses. Our data suggests 1 in 5 still rely on government support that supports small businesses, have on average 40% of money owed to them overdue. Building resilience and sustainability into the small business economy is key to build back better. We've seen through this crisis digital adoption being brought forward, and we estimate by 5 years. Many of our customers have pivoted their business model utilising e-commerce platforms to find new customers and new markets. We estimate that the UK can have a productivity payout to the tune of £58 billion over the next 5 years if small businesses truly embrace digital. Government initiatives like Making Tax Digital and the Help to Grow scheme will hopefully help small businesses make the transition to digital and begin to reap the productivity benefits. The other challenge facing small businesses is climate change and sustainable practices. The evidence is there that if you are part of the climate solution, you are more likely to grow, but most importantly, you are likely to future-proof your business. Intuit is proud to partner with the UK Prime Minister and the Secretary of State in promoting small businesses to take positive climate action. We're committed resources to support small businesses to sign up to the government's Small to Medium Enterprise Climate Hub, and I know there'll be some significant announcements coming shortly. We're not going to stop there. Working with awesome partners such as Octopus Energy, and will help small businesses reach their net zero goals over the weeks and years to come. And then Prosperity Hub. So we announced that first ever Prosperity Hub outside North America would be in the northeast of England. The Prosperity Hub program aims to stimulate economic prosperity by supporting under-resourced communities with investment, training, and educational resources. As demonstrated by the video you've just watched, we are working closely with schools like the Excelsior Academy, supporting children through an incredible, challenging year. Our hub, Prosperity Hub, has 3 core programs. The first is a small business success program, providing skills, training such as digital and cash flow management skills, a job readiness program, training personal finance and entrepreneurship to students, and a sustainability program, helping small businesses to save money with reducing their carbon footprint. Small businesses are the backbone of the UK economy. Working with the economic partners, local and central governments, and many of you in the room, we are excited about what we have achieved in the North East to help small businesses thrive.
Amy, thank you very much indeed for that. I'd just like to throw a couple of quick questions of my own to you, and then perhaps I'll ask the Secretary of State to respond to what you said there. You mentioned your mission to help small businesses thrive and the fact digital has played a critical role during the pandemic. Perhaps you could explain a little bit more about the role small businesses have played in the North East during the crisis and how technology has been an enabler for what you're doing.
Absolutely. QuickBooks partnered with Oxford Economics to explore the hidden value of small businesses to the communities they serve and the critical role of digital helping businesses adapt. We found small businesses in the North East played a pivotal role in supporting communities through the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, contributing to an incredible £500 million through community initiatives such as volunteering, cash donations, NHS discounts, and so on. Small businesses in the North East gave an average of £684 each in cash donations, 9 hours per month in staff volunteering, and 375 in product or service donations in 2020. And in turn, this was mirrored by an upswell in support and appreciation from small businesses from the general public, with half of consumers in the North East now more likely to shop at small businesses compared to March 2020. And then digitalisation has been an essential part of maintaining both small businesses' relationship with communities and the ability to trade, with 90% of small and medium-sized businesses in the North East becoming more digital in 2020. Among those who launched a new digital product or service, 57% could not have operated without them. So it's been a really tough time, but Intuit QuickBooks truly salutes small businesses in the North East and the way they've pivoted and supported their communities.
And Amy, just one more question before I ask the Secretary of State to respond. You've mentioned the productivity.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go very soon.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't you respond now, Secretary of State?
Well, look, I think the SME challenge is something that's very real. I think that, you know, it's not easy, but it's one thing for me or the Prime Minister to announce big, you know, £billion investments. But I think, you know, we have to think more as a government and as even as a society about SMEs, which are really the backbone of the British economy. Something like 60% of 99% of businesses are SMEs, and 60% of the workforce work in them. It's clearly a majority. And I think, you know, hearing Amy's words, I think it's very inspiring, but we need to think more critically about what we can do to help. So thank you.
Excellent. Just very briefly, Sarah Glendinning would like to say thank you to you, Secretary of State, and then we'll let you go. I'm
sorry it's been so brief, but I've got
no problem. It's been great having you.
About next week and COVID and all of that.
Totally understand. Sarah's going to say thank you in a little, just 1 minute, and then we'll say thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. On behalf of the North East Economic Forum, fellow panellists and colleagues on the call, we'd like to extend our thanks to you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We know the pressure on your time, in particular, given the timing of today's meetings, and we appreciate you being here to share your thoughts and reflections. You'll know the North East region has a proud history of innovation and spirit, tackling adversity head on, and the desire to build back better from the pandemic and create a more inclusive recovery for all our communities is evident with you being here and listening and sharing your thoughts with us today. I was particularly delighted to hear you say the North East is the centre of the green industrial revolution, and I'm sure that will be a source of encouragement to everyone on this call. So I give the voice of business a Geordie accent on behalf of our businesses. So I hope that you will now have a Northern accent to your decision making when you go back to central government.
Thank you.
Once again, please accept our heartfelt thanks for joining us, and we look forward to partnering with you.
Bye.
Thanks, Secretary of State. Thank you. Lovely. Well, that was great to hear from the Secretary of State, Kwasi Kwarteng there. Let's move the conversation on. Sarah and Amy have very kindly spoken, and I just want to hear now from Jamie Driscoll, who's the Mayor of the North of Tyne, and we're going to hear from him for about 5 minutes. Then we're going to hear from Clem Cowton from Octopus Energy, and then we'll open up the panel discussion. And do get your questions in by using the Q&A box at the bottom. We've got a couple of really good questions already I want to throw in, but first of all, let's hear from Mayor Driscoll. If I could give the floor over to you, Mayor Driscoll.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, what do businesses need? That's an interesting question, isn't it? And one of the problems with that question is, what's the definition of businesses? It's a bit like saying, what do people need? Now, last night, what people across England needed was a goal before we hit the penalty shootout. But if you start to look at what people actually need in their lives, it's things like security and certainty, and then opportunity and a belief in the future. And that's exactly what businesses need. And it is that element of policy certainty, that opportunity to grow and to innovate, and a belief in the future. So it's the same as people to businesses. And a lot of this can be seen through the proxy of jobs, because jobs means businesses are thriving. There's lots of jobs, that means businesses are doing well, but it also helps us with all of our social challenges that we have as a region, particularly, and also as a country. We've also got to be high paying jobs, because what we really want in the Northeast is those HQ jobs. So the companies that I've been instrumental in bringing here, companies like Verisure, well, they don't just operate as a call center. All their data systems are here, and their HR functions and senior management, because that's what boosts the economy of the Northeast. Big companies come at the north of Tyne, like British Volt, as well as some fantastic stuff down the south of the Tyne that I'm not going to attempt to take any credit for. But if we look at the north of Tyne, our jobs record, pity Kwasi's gone actually, because our target by now is to have 700 jobs in the pipeline. It's actually 4,200, and we've safeguarded another 2,600 under COVID. So we're good at what we do. When we talk about SMEs, the north of Tyne is effectively a large business. So I'm the chair of a large business, and we've not only are we way ahead of target, we deliver all our projects earlier than pretty much anyone else and within time, and on really low overheads. So that's the sort of approach, you know, you want politicians of any party who actually understand businesses and are committed to it, because I'm on leave at the moment and I've still come to talk to you. So what do we want? And this is where I really wish Kwasi was here. What we want is to devolve the skills, because it doesn't matter what the nature of your business is. I'm hearing from hospitality at the moment, they're really struggling to get chefs. So it's not just trained engineers. I'm an engineer by profession. It's across the whole range, because if we're going to increase productivity, that's going to involve increasing the skills base. And one of the best ways to do that is with people who are actually in work, progressing in work, as opposed to producing a pool that's out there and hope that somehow the market matches that. That's not going to give people a sort of certainty and security that they want if they're going to commit their time to taking a dip in wages while they're retraining. So what else do we want? We want to devolve transport, because no business is going to work if people can't get there, customers can't get there, and they can't get their stuff in and out. Connectivity is also a part of transport. We've brought firms here who are exporting over the internet, and that's one of the best ways to ensure economic growth without environmental damage. So we're not shipping things around the world, we're shipping information products around the world. What else? Well, fiscal innovation we really need. Often when it comes to policy making, it's the old adage, if you only got a hammer, every product looks like a nail. I don't want to be raising taxes in the Northeast. What I want is a regional wealth fund, so we can invest equity in small businesses here, because it's, of all the English regions, we have the lowest business density, and capital is an issue. I want earn back. All these extra jobs I'm creating above target, they generate PAYE, national insurance, employers' national insurance, employees' national insurance, all going to central government. So I've asked ministers, can I have the first year of that back so I can create you even more jobs? Because if this was a corporation this successful, they'd be pouring money into us to grow. What else? Well, we've got all sorts of programs I can't go through in 5 minutes, but we're investing in our Green New Deal, and that's out there. Partnerships with the National Innovation Centre for Data, National Innovation Centre for Ageing, to bring that research and development so that we can expand it and turn it into jobs. And if we come together as a region, I would love to be doing that. I saw a question there from Paul in Net Park in Sedgefield. At the moment, obviously I can't help anyone south of the Tyne. Our entrepreneurship, we've got 10K vouchers going out. We're doing our digital adoption program. What I really want though is to land with Kwasi and others what we put in last year for the comprehensive spending review, involving the business community and the universities and everybody. And that was a recovery deal that would create 55,000 high quality jobs in the Northeast. And you can only do that by growing the business base. So government aren't fully convinced yet. They know though that devolution, they keep asking, does it work in theory? And I keep saying, look, it's already working in practice.
Wonderful, thanks, Jamie. And it reminds me of the former Taoiseach, the former Prime Minister of Ireland, who once said, yes, it works in practice, but will it work in theory? He was a noted economist, so we had a good thought on that. Thank you so much for your thoughts. We're going to return to you in a minute for some of the Q&A. But first of all, let's hear from Clem Kwarteng, who's the Director of External Affairs at Octopus Energy. And I know Octopus is a really exciting newish company, not that new, but I'm actually declaring interest. I'm a customer, and I know they're doing great things in the Northeast. So Clem, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, not that new and not that small, but started by an entrepreneur from Teesside. So that's a nice kind of link back. Yeah, we've now Octopus now is a global business with $4 billion revenue, 1,600 FTEs, operating in 6 countries with 5 sites in the UK. So. And actually soon to be a 6th in Newcastle, so we're just about to open an office in Newcastle, and considering new sites all the time, including one in Teesside. So lots of things going on. I've kind of been listening to what everybody else has been saying, and of course the focus here is on how SMEs and how government can help SMEs to grow. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about how large businesses can help SMEs to grow, and large green businesses in particular. The world is currently undergoing a new industrial revolution, which is as part of this imperative to hit net zero. Historically, technological revolutions have been massive creators of growth. And for British businesses to win in this revolution, we've got to act fast to identify those opportunities for green growth. The way that Octopus sees that opportunity is through electrification, actually, that, we've started to see it already with electric vehicles, but also we've identified a huge opportunity with heat. And I'm actually sitting in, I don't know if you can see behind me, a £10 million centre that we've just opened up. Took us 6 weeks to build. We've now got 2 full, you can see one of them behind me, 2 full-sized houses, installed the space for 20 in this hangar. And it's a centre for training engineers and developing new technology and installation innovation in heat pumps. And we are expecting some really exciting policy on that coming forward. But actually, in the meantime, our business is already, our engineering business, Octopus Energy Services, is already gearing up to kind of put rocket boosters on the growth of heat electrification and heat pumps. We plan to halve the cost of a heat pump system within 18 months and get to parity with the gas boiler within a few years. That's just kind of context to say, the opportunity for growth here is massive. Why is that relevant to SMEs in the Northeast? Well, Octopus's philosophy is of inclusive growth, and that applies to the communities that we live in, but also that we work in, but also to the kind of ecosystem of business around us. So what we like to do is when we move into a sector, we like to take SMEs with us and help grow them. One example is John Chimmick, Octopus Energy Services CEO, was telling me about just earlier today. Energize, a small charger and smart meter installation business based near Doncaster. We've partnered with them to help us with our smart meter rollout. They started recruiting for us engineers just before the pandemic hit. Of course, that had the potential to be really devastating for them. We supported them by giving them a loan to get them through lockdown, and support with getting engineers onto furlough. And since then, we've converted that loan into a 25% equity in their business, so that rather than pay back that money, they're now growing the business with our support. They used to have 20 engineers, they now have 80 engineers. That's in the space of a year. You know, and that's growth through a pandemic in a kind of face-to-face installation business. Another business called Smart Metering Systems, owner-operated. They grew from no engineers on our contract at all to over 100 engineers working solely with us. We've got 500 engineers on our network. 400 of those engineers are not directly employed. So, you know, the way that we grow as a business is not just by you know, moving into a space and dominating it, but it's also by kind of picking up and growing SMEs on that journey with us. We don't want to be Amazon. We don't want to, I mean, we want to be Amazon in some ways, but we don't want to be Amazon in the sense that, you know, that you know, every business has to look over their shoulder as soon as we enter a sector. Our vision is one where, you know, this centre, that training and engineering centre that I'm in, will be replicating that all around the country. You know, policy goes, you know, if the government takes the brakes off decarbonisation policy, we'll be able to train, you know, there are 1.7 million gas boilers installed last year. If we can do that with heat pumps instead, then that's a hell of a lot of engineers that we're going to need to be training. And as Jamie said, we want to be doing that while they're in work, and you know, we're able to kind of pivot them away from what they're already doing. Lots of them will be in smart meter installations, others will be plumbers, electricians. And we'll be able to, you know, get them in here, train them up on the job and get them out again, you know, in short order. And those will be our own engineers, our only directly employed engineers, but also the kind of partners that we work with. So I think, you know, in summary, I think there's a lot of kind of anxiety that comes with technological change, particularly in areas where perhaps that has had a bit of a devastating impact historically. But our vision through electrification is that green growth can have a massive, massive opportunity to be inclusive and to take SMEs and grow them fast.
Thank you so much. So just to recap, we've heard from Clem Kwarteng from Octopus, Sarah Clendenning from the CBI, Ami Verma from Intuit, and Jamie Driscoll, the Mayor of North Tyne. So we're going to have all four of them now as part of the discussion. And Ami, if I can just start with you, there was a question I wanted to ask you before Kwasi Kwarteng had to go, but didn't get the chance, unfortunately. And that's just that the productivity challenge was mentioned facing small businesses in the Northeast. There was someone who contacted us to say they're a QuickBooks user. QuickBooks has really helped them run their business, but perhaps, Ami, you could talk about how technology can help UK small businesses tackle the productivity gap.
Yeah, no, thank you, Peter. So technology has played an important role in economic development and gains in productivity. We've seen how businesses have turned to Zoom during their pandemic. We're on Zoom today. On online sales in retail have gone up by 60%, and 63% of Brits tried a new shopping behaviour during lockdown. And in short, there's several key developments which we believe will support small businesses, be agile and level the playing field against their bigger competitors. First, AI. So this has the ability to automate mundane tasks, free up time to serve customers. A great example would be our VAT checker. So it's checking your VAT return for the 10 most common mistakes, giving you peace of mind that your return is accurate. Open banking. So the ability for a small business to control and use their banking data would be a game changer. More than 44% of small but medium enterprise businesses believe open banking will make the choice of loan providers better, and more than a third said loan rates would be more favourable. And then virtual tech or access to services through live video is changing consumer and business behaviour more than ever thought possible. So demand for telehealth has grown by 64% this year, and I'm sure many more markets will be disrupted going forward, which will be driven by small businesses' demand. So I'd encourage, as we continue to partner with technology and fintech sectors to truly harness the power and benefits of digital economy in the small business sector.
Lovely, thanks, Ami. Well, we've got all sorts of questions coming in from everybody from many people who are watching, and we've got our four panelists, and I'm just going to keep asking those questions to the four of them. Rather than me coming in after every single answer, if I could just ask you to limit your answers to sort of a minute or 90 seconds. And if we just keep the same order, if it's all right, it's the order you're on my screen. So we'll start with Sarah, then go to Jamie, then Clem, then Amy. That just happens to be the order that you're on my screen. Just so you're talking one after another, and I don't have to come in after everyone, so we don't waste any time hearing my voice when you don't have to. So the first question these are all from people who are watching this afternoon. One was quite simple. I'm just going to do two in a row here. One quite simply about promoting embryonic science businesses in places like the Net Park in Sedgefield. How much of an opportunity do you see that for the region? And secondly, before the coronavirus, the northeast of England had 163,000 private sector businesses, the fewest of any English region and the lowest business density rate. How would you encourage more businesses to start up in the region and also stay there? Could there be a Silicon Valley on the Tyne? So if we just do it in the order, Sarah, Jamie, Clem, Amy, and Sarah, if we just start with you.
Thanks, Peter. A very short question and answer to the question about supporting embryonic science businesses in Net Park. Absolutely, we need to do all we can to encourage that. And I think there's a variety of measures, which is also making sure we're looking on a global scale and making sure that investors from around the world see the Northeast as an opportunity to come and invest and grow their businesses, especially, and we know that there's a strength in the health and science sector here in the region. On the growing our business density, looking at how we are, I think there are many areas that we could be looking at, but just picking up on the tech adoption piece, I think one opportunity is making sure that our small businesses have the opportunity to invest in technology that they can innovate and adopt quickly. And I think that's learning. We did a report at CBI called Ostrich to Magpie, which was about learning from other organizations on what technologies to adopt and grow that added the best benefit to their businesses. So I think it's about working with our networks, it's about working through our supply chains and encouraging that tech adoption. And I know I'm about to pass to Jamie, but I think one example of that is the North of Tyne Innovation Recovery Fund that was launched last year. I'll let you pick up about that, Jamie, but I think that's one of the fantastic examples of businesses and the North of Tyne coming together to support growth in our region of our SME community.
We haven't collaborated on these questions, by the way, and in case anyone thinks we have. 90 seconds, not a chance of doing these questions justice. Short answer, Net Park, yeah, so North of Tyne, that's exactly the approach we're taking in things like healthy ageing, in things like digital, in things like the Green Industrial Revolution, working with the catapults. And we're putting money into that. And often it's about removing those blocks that kind of don't fall under any one silo. So central government they're not nimble enough to deal with it quite often, and you have to de-risk it in order to get private sector to have the confidence to invest. So we do that, and if we come together as a region, I'd love to do it for Net Park and others as well, because we're already doing this in places like Blythe. It is true we have the lowest number of, we will probably always have the lowest number of businesses because we are tiny compared to some of the other English regions. Our population is about half, but it is also true that we have the lowest rate, and that's something that has to be fixed. So there's a lot of stuff we've done through COVID directly supporting, for example, shared spaces, people who fell through the gaps in terms of business rates, so that their office spaces were still open. Because there's a reason people have an office, because often they can't, the two of them just sit on the end of somebody's bed with laptops is just not viable when we're talking about micro businesses. The £10,000 that we are making available as grants for any sort of innovation, because we don't have to come up with the innovations, the people out there do that, in order to help these businesses grow across the Northeast, a whole series of things, right down to training programs for people from deprived backgrounds in order that they can become entrepreneurs. And we've already had some successes in that. We've only been here 2 years, we are a hell of an organisation. What we really want is, exactly as was implied in your question there, Peter, the time buzzing again, which is what Kwasi was talking about. So the time built campaign to make sure that this entire sector needs to happen. You can probably guess from the books behind me that more than anyone, I understand the severity of the climate crisis and what we're facing. So Clem, at some point, you and I should have a chat and see what we can do to get you invest more here and really get this to power up the Northeast.
I'd love to do that, actually. I'm sorry, if you finished your answer, that sounded like a very rousing conclusion. And actually, you know, when you're talking there, I was thinking about this. I joined Octopus. I mean, I led the energy price cap campaign we campaigned for an energy price cap. So I was doing that from consultancy beforehand, but as I joined Octopus to kind of work, full time in house, we were opening our office in Leicester, which is the first, our second home after London. And I was thinking about what it was that enticed us to do that. Actually, it was the local authority, the Mayor Peter Soulsby. We had a kind of, a list of towns that we were looking at. And we had some criteria, things like we wanted there to be a university because we wanted to have, graduates, or at the time graduates actually. We now hire lots of people who aren't graduates, but at the time we were looking for graduates to look after our customers. We wanted a city that could be walkable and cyclable very easily, so that we could attract kind of really young, bright people who wanted to live close to the centre of town and be part of all of that, the kind of the buzz that a city can bring. We wanted, and also of course we wanted that, people not to have to drive to the office, because we need to be thinking about, in kind of much more intelligently about how we get around in a world where we can't be relying on petrol. We wanted great nightlife, things that I think often historically businesses have looked for, things like cheap rent, car parking, and a business park with their name on it, that kind of stuff. Actually, what we wanted was to attract people who wanted to live in a really bustling, buzzing town. And part of, the reason that, a big reason that Leicester won in that sort of beauty pageant was that the Mayor, Peter Soulsby, sold us on his vision for Leicester. He was so enthusiastic about Octopus coming, and had, walked us around the town, showing us his, describing how he wanted to change it, talking about getting cycle lanes in and making the streets easier to walk in. Talking, showed us a multi-story car park where he thought we should turn into an office building. Actually, for a while we were sitting in some, we were occupying some council buildings, some council office buildings. Our first office was actually right opposite Town Hall, where they had some space that they weren't using, and that's where we started off and then grew from there. So it can make a huge difference, how active and engaged a mayor is, or a local authority is, in where a business decides to set up shop, be that SME or a larger business. And of course, then you are able to grow with those SMEs in those local areas. And actually, one of the first things we did in Leicester was to start up a local energy tariff, so that local businesses could go green and talk to their customers about going green using wind energy from a local wind farm. So, that kind of sense of localism, pride in your local area, and creating really livable towns and cities is so important to us.
Wonderful, thank you, Clem. Ami, I know the screen froze at a point for you. Do you have the question? Do you want to answer it, or would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, I'm here. I've got the question now. I was just listening to the rest of them speak. So no, thank you. We heard about it earlier about the Prosperity Hub and how we're helping our small business success programs and helping entrepreneurs to give them the tools to be able to then build businesses as well. So, and especially for those businesses that are struggling, we're looking at the right partnerships and how we can continue those supports. We're looking, and the way we'll do that is when we provide those support through those partnerships, we can look at ways to provide product discounts through our own offerings within QuickBooks as well, connection to experts for training resources and materials. We also have something called Design for Delight training, where we talk about, we look at new ways of innovation, brainstorming, and customer-driven innovation through those through that support, and then employee volunteer opportunities to directly support small businesses in the community where we can help those businesses grow. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to help the North East through those entrepreneurship work as well. So more to come on that.
Lovely. Thank you very much to all four panelists. And just to reiterate, if you want to add a question, and quite a few of them coming in, we have about 25 minutes left. I'm just going to ask the next question of the panelists, and it's about free ports. And someone says, whilst the free port status was allocated to the Tees, what support and intervention should the government make to enable the growth of the River Tyne, the region's single biggest natural economic opportunity? So let's us, again, same order, Sarah, Jamie, Clem and Amy, please.
I think the free thought exercise gave the region the opportunity to collaborate together across all sectors, across public and private sectors, to come together to put super bids together about how we can stimulate economic growth and opportunity in our regions. And I think it's fantastic that we have one in our region, and we should be building on that and looking how the supply chain can work out about it. And I think also from the powerhouse of the Port of Tyne and the River Tyne itself, I think we should look at the work that we've been doing there and building upon that moving forward, and not being afraid to go back with a collective voice to government with really, really ambitious plans about how fantastic this whole region is and can be even more so in the future.
Earlier, previous answer, Clem was talking about technological change, and I use the phrase the just transition. If we look at the history of the Northeast, you know, someone like Swan's Yard, pretty much everyone who lives here knows someone or had a relative who used to work in that yard. We've lost our coal mines, lost our shipbuilding, lost our steelworks. And that was the very example of an unjust transition, where people, those industries were closed and that was it. And that deep scarring still exists a generation on in some parts of the Northeast. The climate crisis is about the most serious threat we face, not just as an economy, but as a species. And unless we deal with that, we're going to have very serious problems. But we're not going to deal with it if we start saying to people who are in low-paid jobs, you know, might be dropping their kids off at school before going to the first of their minimum wage jobs, sell your old diesel car and buy a Tesla, because they'll just tell you you're crazy because they can't afford it. So we need to take people with us. That's the approach we must take. So there's so many things we can do in that we're doing loads in the North of Tyne. We're directly funding people to be able to move from one industry to retrain to move into these new industries. One of the things that we did it was Rona, who's director for innovation for Procter & Gamble, who came to see me in, so this must be 2019, quite early on, and said, I've got this plan and I might be able to persuade my global chief director, I'm not sure of his title, but I'll need your support. And my colleagues told me not to bother coming to talk to you, because it says whenever you talk to anyone with government, it takes far too long for anything to happen. Within months, we had the Advanced Circular Economy Demonstrator set up. And it's not just P&G, but all sorts of companies working there to develop new, more environmentally sustainable products. So that's what we can do. And that's the approach that I want to take when it comes to the time. Now, there are things that need to happen. Kwasi was talking earlier about we need to hit that 60% local content. The fact is that that ambition has been there for a while and it hasn't happened, and government need to step up, because these things can be enforced without any change in the laws, without any change in trade agreements, simply by having local economic impact assessments taken into account when you invest. And if we do that, we can get all of that work coming here to the East Coast ports, which the Tyne is a major one. That alone is going to create around 7,000 high quality jobs along the Tyne. That is massive for our region. And it's environmentally sustainable, and socially sustainable, and economically sustainable. So these are sort of things that we can be doing. We need to be investing in the infrastructure, because those cables that move the electricity up and down the East Coast are too low. And as the wind turbines get bigger and bigger and bigger, you can't get the things under them anymore. And as a result, yards on the Tyne are unable to bid for work that they could deliver quite successfully. So these are the sort of things that need to happen. It requires us coming together as a region. It requires a fair degree of cross-party political unity about making sure that we are bringing jobs and a green industry here. And, you know, Sarah's been fantastic, as have her colleagues in the other business organisations, in terms of bringing this together. And I wish Kwasi was still here to hear that.
Okay, Clem.
I know it's supposed to be me talking now, but honestly, we don't import an enormous amount or export it at the moment, or rather not physical goods. We import and export, or rather we export digital technology. So I think that, you know, everything that Jamie has said is absolutely correct. And actually what he said previously about, you know, the need to kind of create places, sustainable placemaking, as well as you know, the simple kind of nuts and bolts infrastructure as jobs is so important. I'd also say that this revolution will be a digital revolution. It's not simply about the cables, it's also about how we can, use algorithms to optimize using energy at times when there's lots of wind on the system, and making less use of that, not having to turn on gas power stations at times when there's high demand and less wind. So, there's an ecosystem of businesses that are going to become ever more interconnected by digital infrastructure. And I think it's really important that we don't get too sidetracked, or not sidetracked, don't get too fixated on physical infrastructure, and make sure that we kind of remember the skills of the future as well as today.
Thank you, Clem. And Ami, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, hi. So I echo what Jamie said, and I'd say Sarah and Jamie definitely have the better voices in regards to this. But what I'd encourage is really strong network of small businesses to support major initiatives within the North East, and as we move forward.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Another question from someone who's on the call. Tax incentives and reliefs provide significant financial assistance to progressive businesses in tech and the renewable energy sector, areas in which the North East is building a considerable reputation and skill base. Those only apply to corporations, so many organisations such as trusts, partnerships and sole traders do not qualify. This seems inequitable. Do you think measures could be introduced to help, as this would encourage innovation? So if you just do the same list, so Sarah, Jamie, Clem and Ami, please.
Thanks, Peter. I think if I'm going to come back to something I just mentioned before, there was some work done, a survey done that Sage undertook about also working with CBI, which supported some of the work that we've been doing about where would SMEs see the greatest impact of support recovering from the pandemic. And within that, it was grant support in the short term. And I think there needs to be a real look at, across all the makeup of different types and sizes and shapes of business, talking to them to understand what would be the most efficient and effective tools to help them recover quickly. So I think it's important. I mean, Jamie, you're coming after me on this. I know there are things in the pipeline as well. Just the way the screen's set up, as I say, we haven't planned this in advance, but I know there's been a lot of work that's been done there. And I think when you're looking at some of the activity that the North East LEF are doing as well, in terms of the crowdfunding support for businesses on recovery as well, where are the lessons about that we can learn to take forward as well?
Like Luke Shaw crossing in for Harry Kane, isn't it? I honestly can't play football very well. It's always an interesting question when we start talking about tax. I'm generally of the opinion that tax breaks don't actually tend to encourage economic success, economic investment. What they tend to do is mean that people, because you only pay tax when you already have profits, and large profits in particular, they don't help encourage startups particularly. They might, if you can write off certain kinds of investment early on equity. It's so tenuous, and I'm just not convinced it works. It was interesting, Clem spoke earlier about equity investment, because that's actually one of the biggest barriers. Sarah's talking about grant investment. She's absolutely spot on. There's lots of things that we're doing in that space. I'm not going to go into detail, but I would urge everyone to have a look at the North of Tyne website regularly to see what's coming out there. And it's often the nuts and bolts that are needed. So where is the space that you can create a cluster with other industries? Where is the specific skills training coming from? Because if you're wanting to set up a business in a certain, for example, in digital, and there's a shortage of people who have those skills, it doesn't really matter how low your tax base is if you can't get anybody to come and do the jobs. So these are the sorts of nuts and bolts, not micromanagement, but cross-silo working that are needed to get things working in an area. And particularly when it comes to SMEs, then yeah, frankly, you're not going to be able to afford the sort of tax lawyers that are going to get you the let-offs that people like Vodafone can. So I think rather than changing the rules, what we actually want is a better ecosystem to support it. And above all, and this is the one thing that every business needs to succeed, is customers. So if we increase aggregate demand, that is actually what is needed.
I think I answered this question largely in the comments I made, which are, I can't speak to government policy, but what I can say is that, it's really important that, important to Octopus that we kind of take sole traders and help them turn into, businesses. Some people may be happy kind of existing as a sole trader, in perpetuity, and that's brilliant and their own choice. Many SMEs and sole traders are looking to grow, and it's that growth that we're interested in. So we want to help businesses grow, and for our own business to grow. That's through, and that's particularly relevant in things like heat pump installation, actually, because so many of the businesses in that sector are sole traders, and as such don't have the are not able to afford to take the time out of their existing business to train up, to skill up in a new business. So, our plan in that area is to help sole traders on that journey, to be able to kind of give them the training and support they need while still being able to earn the money what they're doing, the existing installations, and therefore to be able to help them to grow those businesses. So in terms of government relief, I don't have an enormous amount to say. What I would say is that, as Jamie says, if we can create the demand for low carbon technologies, larger businesses are able to train up those sole traders. We'll need a huge supply chain, and that creates massive opportunities for everyone.
Thanks, Clem. And Ami, have you any thoughts to add to this?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree that more can be done to support self-employed and sole traders. This is the cohort who will shortly become part of Making Tax Digital. So I agree we need a strong ecosystem to help self-employed to get the skills needed for that future.
Lovely, thank you very much. Just in the last 15 minutes, I'm going to shake up the order a little bit. I realise it's probably a little bit unfair to Sarah just to give her 3 seconds to get her thoughts together and all the questions. So I'll shake it up a little bit. I'm going to put 2 questions together. One of them is how we talked obviously a lot about the negative effects. Everybody has dealt with and experienced the negative effects of the pandemic. But how can we use the pandemic and its effects as an opportunity to increase the drive towards net zero in the Northeast? What can we do to encourage more SMEs to make that transition in a way that's commercially attractive? And just as a supplementary question, do you think more government departments should set up offices in the Northeast so they don't have such a London-centric view? I think you can probably predict the answer to that one. Maybe we could start with Clem on that one.
On the government one, it's tough because whenever this is tried, what happens is that the senior civil servants need to be near the politicians need to be near Parliament, and so what you create is a kind of 2-tiered working environment where the centre of power just remains in London. That you'd hope that the massive advances made in remote working might help to a certain extent that in the coming years, but I don't think we should be relying on government departments really to provide growth. I think actually that's potentially a sign of failure. If we're sort of relying on job creation from central government rather than the multiplier effect from businesses, then I think that's probably the sign of a failed industrial policy. What changed positive? I mean, what was really interesting in COVID was the extent to which things that people always kind of said they would like to do but really don't have the time to, or it's in a 10-year investment plan, for example, digitalizing their operations, suddenly became possible overnight almost. Businesses suddenly found the wherewithal to support their employees in flexible working, or to kind of put their operations into digitalized form to varying degrees of success, but certainly there have been massive success stories in that, and I think that there's a lesson there in terms of what we can really do when we put our minds to it, what businesses can achieve when they're properly motivated, and that has massive impacts on the kind of the pace of technological innovation on climate. I think it's sharpened people's minds in terms of, I think for now, if somebody says to you, oh, well, we're not going to be able to decarbonize heating because nobody will want a heat pump instead of a gas boiler, you'd be like, we've completely changed how we live our lives, under terrible circumstances. But what it shows is that actually humans are a lot more resilient and a lot more open to change than even they think they are, you know, and people adapt very fast and actually really embrace new technology if it's something that benefits them or is cheaper. So I think what we can kind of learn is if governments put those sort of macro incentives in place, humans are incredibly innovative and adaptive and will thrive in new technological environments.
Thanks, Clem. You've clearly read your Adam Smith. Just on to Ami Verma, what are your thoughts on these 2 points, just about increasing the drive towards net zero and also whether you think government offices should be in the Northeast?
Yeah, so with regards to the net zero, sorry, we talk about, so in my mind there's 3 things that really come to trend. There's resilience, those macro trends we're seeing, and the digital economy, and it truly is around digital adoption. What we're seeing is the pandemic, and it's really pulled us forward 5 years, and I touched on it earlier, where we've really accelerated our move to digitalization. And as we look at that, it's put us at the front and center for millions in all walks of life. So we've seen things like, for example, Zoom and Peloton truly leading the way in a number, as an example. We've stepped away from people movement, and business have really talked about how they step up through digitalization and connect with through employees, customers. And we've seen that, and what we've learned as well, and I think she had a stat earlier, 60% of small businesses in the UK adopt new digital tools. So I think there's a big opportunity around how we power the community through the digital adoption piece as well. With regards, sorry, Peter, were you going to?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and with regards to the second question, I would say I agree with Clem as well, but as we look at where the government is set up, we see that in central London. But as we've now been talking about the Northeast and the focus, and we know there's huge opportunities, I think there's a potential opportunity there for us to look at how we can then look to move forward in some of those government initiatives and offices within that space.
Let's go to the thoughts of Jamie.
Peter,
Alan.
yeah, just I'm really fascinated by this discussion, and I'm so pleased with the panel discussion, and I want to thank the panel members. But the 2 existential threats for humanity are climate change and, as we've seen now, with this pandemic. And what I'd like to ask Intuit, and we haven't discussed this, so I'm just putting you on the spot, but I chair the G20 Health Partnership, which manages health policy, health security across G20 countries. And I work closely with the World Health Organization and with the G20 presidencies. And we also advise Michael Bloomberg, who's the he's the UN's ambassador for climate change. I just wonder, in terms of the Prosperity Hub, and if we're going to try and support small businesses, could we perhaps look at an initiative through the Northeast Economic Forum in collaboration with the elected mayors, and Jamie, thanks for joining today, to look at, to really drill down on those that are involved in climate change, the small businesses, and those that are involved in health, because the vaccine that was developed wasn't developed by AstraZeneca or Pfizer. It was developed by small biotech companies and by Oxford University. And we've got a great life sciences cluster here in the Northeast. And I mean, I would be willing to to offer my connections and networks around the world, if Intuit would be happy through its Prosperity Hub to work with the mayors and with council leaders and the LEP to bring together people on climate change and on health, because I think they are the 2 big crises and they are the 2 areas of unmet need for humanity.
Thanks, Alan. Ami, let's get your reaction to that, and then let's get the thoughts of Jamie and Sarah.
Yeah, sorry. Great update, and thank you, Alan, for sharing. We'd absolutely love to explore this so much more. We are doing a lot of work now within Intuit as well to look at how we can look at net zero and some of those carbon initiatives. We've partnered up with Octopus Energy and a Clem's on there as well, on how we can support our employees as well. But we are also looking at other key initiatives that we can do within the Northeast. So partnering up as also talking with the City of Newcastle, looking at Excelsior Academy around energy efficiency. So there's some exciting things we're looking at, and absolutely love to discuss and take this further.
Lovely, thank you. Jamie, your thoughts on all of this, please.
Thanks, Peter. Well, yeah, there's a few questions in there. You're not going to get any argument out of me that that climate change and health are so extremely important. We're already doing loads of stuff in this area. I'm not going to enumerate all that. But unlike central government, we're not a super tanker. So get in touch and we'll adapt very, very quickly and take it on board. The questions that you brought earlier one was around how do we turn COVID into an opportunity? And it is a bit of a cliche, you know, every cloud has a silver lining. It's been utterly devastating. But when we look at the economic effects, I think it's more accelerated changes that were already happening than it has changed things. There was already a drift towards more remote working, and it's perhaps brought that forward 10 years. There was already a drift towards more online shopping, and it's perhaps accelerated that again by a decade or two. So things like remote working, like we need to be redesigning our city and our town centres to make them attractive spaces other than just somewhere you go, empty your pockets and go home with some stuff, so that there are other benefits for being there and improving quality of life in the way. And when it comes to things like remote working, well, we actually have an opportunity now to be getting people to shift away from a car-dominated transport system. Because if you don't need to drive everywhere all the time, then we can start to see the rise of car clubs. We can start to see the investment in public transport to make it a total network, so that people actually walk a bit more, cycle a bit more. If they want to, the advent of e-bikes, the cost is coming down and down. I no longer own a car and manage just fine. If I lived in rural Northumberland and was a farmer, I wouldn't be able to do that. So it's not going to apply to everybody, but we can make this happen. And then Alan's earlier point about health, there's an obesity time bomb out there as well. By 2050, it's going to be costing us 49 billion a year as a country. Well, there's only so much we're going to be doing by developing new meds for type 2 diabetes. Surely it would be better to just make us all healthier in the first place. And one of the best ways of doing that is, rather than sitting getting loaded full of cortisol in a traffic jam, perhaps we could have a different pace of life where we connect, where we can actually do a little bit of walking, a little bit of exercise. These are the opportunities that come out of it. And this entire ecosystem is going to create loads of opportunities for SMEs to be agile. And what I really want is to support those SMEs so that they can seize these opportunities. And it's not the Airbnb model, which is massively extractive and sticks it all in one place, or Uber. I want to be creating small, vibrant local businesses. One of the best ways to do that is with green delivery, so that we have e-bikes actually delivering places around. They need the capital to get up and running, and that's what I want to be doing with the Regional Wealth Fund. Very briefly, the government offices question. I'm going to reject the premise of the question. I don't want government offices here. I want decision making here. So let's just devolve the powers and the budgets, and everything else will take care of itself. We will end up with regional economic equality if we do that.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Sarah, your thoughts on these matters.
Thank you, Peter. On the decarbonisation point, it's interesting because we surveyed employers' attitudes through the pandemic to see if the priorities changed. And interestingly, the importance and the health and well-being of their staff was the #1 priority for many, many businesses, despite all the other challenges that they were facing. And I think one part of that also is about linking into the causes and concerns that their employees care about. And we know that decarbonising our industries as quickly and as efficiently and as just transition and as simply as possible is really, really important. So I think the way that we can help learn lessons from the pandemic is by listening to each other, but also listening to our colleagues and our employees about what's important and putting that at the forefront of our ESG strategies and about the decisions that are made wherever in the country they're being made, be it in a boardroom or in a chamber. In answer to the where should government be is a question. I was talking to the Chancellor a couple of weeks ago, and his intention is to be in Darlington as much as possible. So if people want to be influencing him then they're going to need to be getting on the train up to the northeast. So more power to that.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for that, Sarah. I'm going to group two questions as the final bit of this, and then Sarah is going to just finish off. But I just want to say it's been a fantastic discussion, and the event is going to be uploaded onto the Northeast Economic Forum's website. So if you have missed some of it, maybe at the start, or you missed something that maybe Kwasi Kwarteng said at the start, or you want to pass this on to some people who haven't had the time to join us today, please do so. That'll be uploaded in the next day or two anyway. But I'm just going to group two quick questions and then go round our panel, and then I'm going to ask Sarah to close the event. So the two questions are, how would you foresee a local growth fund working, and would you work with private sector to create mentorships for SMEs? And secondly, can large private sector businesses play a role in encouraging green SMEs, and how do we set up and sustain that partnership? Let's go to Jamie Driscoll first on that one, please.
Thanks, Peter. Actually, you know, one of the best things that large private sector businesses can do to assist SMEs is to pay them on time. Time and time again, when I talk to the FSB and individual small businesses, that is the #1 thing. So that's what they can do to help any SME. And absolutely, the other thing they can do, and this is something that we have with our Good Work Pledge, is we shouldn't think of good and ethical procurement as being a public sector only approach. That is one of the best things that large private sector businesses can do. So how you spend your money, if you're a large business, probably has as much influence as anything else. How do we foresee a local growth fund working? What I would like to see is a regional wealth fund, in particular one that can use a mixture of loan, soft loan, equity, and at times grant, but particularly the connection power. One of the things that we don't really have as strongly, there are isolated pockets of it, but we don't have anything like the culture in the Northeast in terms of venture support, venture capital support. In particular, not just the money being available, but the skills and connections that come with it. And that's something where if the market isn't doing it, the state should absolutely be intervening. And that's something we can do. And that's something that absolutely will involve sectors across the board, because the whole point of anything devolved, whether it's a local growth fund, a regional wealth fund, whatever you want to call it, is that ability to knit things together that cannot be done centrally.
Thanks, Jamie. Sarah, what are your thoughts on this?
They're not short questions, are they, Peter? I think
there's lots in them.
Absolutely, I'm sure we could discuss for a long time from here. But on the local growth fund, how do I foresee that working? I think taking a step back, one of the important things is that at a local level, decision makers here know what needs to be done and what needs to be knitted together for an overall bigger benefit. And I think it's important that the decision making has inputs from wide groups within our communities to make sure that we get the best output for that. And I think also it's taking a long-term view on this. A lot of the time, I mean, you can also link this to SME support, actually, that sometimes the support is so short-term that actually the benefits can't be realized or magnified by taking it on a much longer-term decision. So obviously looking in a very open and transparent way. In terms of support for SMEs, in terms of their growth, if I remember rightly, that was the second question, how can larger businesses support? Completely agree in terms of procurement practices, but also looking at working through supply chains. Clem gave a great example earlier about how Octopus are working with their supply chain to help upskill and train within their organizations as well. And I think providing that mentorship, that sharing of resources, management, development, training, all of that. I think the soft skills of the leadership of our SME community will only benefit all of us in the longer term as well. So I think that skills and education piece, training and investment through our supply chains is really, really important. And actually, as an aside, I was told by a colleague in London that's doing a research project that the Northeast is coming out as the region that is the most generous in terms of its time and as a business community to volunteering, support in schools, outlook in life, which I think is just phenomenal. And that's obviously, I would believe that. I didn't need to be told, but I just think that is such an invaluable part of our community in the Northeast that knits us together, that we should, make sure that is extended. So.
Wonderful, thanks, Sarah. Just very briefly, if Amy and Clem could give us their thoughts on this in that order, and then Sarah's going to finish off. I don't want to keep any people any longer than we said we would. So Amy and then Clem, please.
So just quickly, I mean, Intuit's very keen to help the North East economy and small business community on how we best see fit. This is, I mean, it's been a great discussion. I'd love to continue discussion as we go forward within our Prosperity Hub efforts as well. I mean, we're already doing equity initiative grants through our job readiness programs, and I'd love to kind of explore more as we go into small business.
Great, thank you. And Clem, briefly, if you will.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the kind of Leicester example, to be honest, about the ability of local authorities to make their towns livable and desirable for businesses to, you know, it's the hardest thing as a business is attracting great people to work for you, and part of that story is the business that you've created and the culture, but you know, another part is, do people want to live and work where you've put your business? So it's, you know, there's that kind of softer element. It's not soft actually, it's things like transport, parks, you know, cycling infrastructure, walking infrastructure, social infrastructure is absolutely vital. The one other kind of element that might be worth considering, although it might be a bit out of reach, is you know, if you think about when Amazon were thinking in the US were thinking about where to situate their sites, you know, there was a kind of a competition style approach run, you know, and I think again the Amazon model is not necessarily one you want to follow blindly, but thinking about how can you know, how can local authorities like really, you know, court businesses to come to them rather than simply having a kind of passive relationship, I think could be helpful.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. And with an awareness that we're going to go about 2 or 3 minutes over, and thank you for your patience, everyone. I just want to say thank you for that brilliant panel. That was Amy Verma, the Head of Customer Success at Intuit, Jamie Driscoll, who's the Mayor of the North of Tyne, Clem Kwarteng, who's Director of External Affairs at Octopus Energy, and Sarah Glendenning is going to give some closing remarks. She was part of the panel, and she is the North East Regional Director for Business Organisation at the CBI, and she is an NTCA Inclusive Economy Board member. So over to you, Sarah, and then I will say cheerio to everyone. Sarah. You're on mute, Sarah.
Nearly got to the end without doing it, but there we go. Thank you ever so much. What a fascinating and wide-ranging discussion we've had this afternoon. Thank you all for joining, for listening and for participating, and for the team at North East Economic Forum for inviting me to be part of the panel. We've covered so much today around how to build back better, how we can support our SMEs for sustainable recovery in the North East. I think 2 areas that I would want to make sure that we highlight is that we know that SMEs are integral to our economy. They were the key enablers of the UK's recovery from the last recession, creating around 3/4 of all the jobs and new jobs after that. And so therefore we need to make sure that we back them as a community in as many ways as possible. I think for me that involves empowerment, it involves confidence building, it involves encouraging digital adoption and tech adoption. It involves looking at long-term opportunities to support our businesses, and I think it means working, as I say, as an entire community. The CBI has been looking specifically at regional growth since 2017, particularly at the data to identify where policy levers and measures can be taken to address inequalities. And I'm happy to share with anyone on the call about that work and how it can support. And this Reviving Regions work will help, I hope, all of our regions to revive and thrive. So in the interest of time, so much to say, there is no one easy answer. It will be a combination of so many factors that will set the North East forth to thrive. I think addressing skills, signposting, working through supply chains, maintaining and adapting support to as and when it's needed will put us on that right path. This is an ongoing conversation, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all in the months and years ahead to achieve those aims.
Sarah, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody, both who has spoken today and behind the scenes who has helped make this event a success. Thank you very much indeed, and have a lovely evening, everybody. Thanks now. Bye-bye.